alteration of reality will not go unpunished.
Hey guys! So, it feels like just last week where we were talking about Doctor Strange 2 and who the upcoming villain was, but there's a new trailer that came out and it is absolutely amazing, and it seems like every single person is talking about it, and more importantly asking the question of who is the Illuminati, who is in it, and who is leading it. And that is what I think we've found out, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode of Constant Review. So, if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, the new Doctor Strange 2 trailer is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, we knew a while ago this was intended to be more of a horror movie, but with the exception of WandaVision, which kind of poked into the thriller genre, there's not really been anything in the MCU that's ever been wild enough to go pure horror. But my god, does this trailer look insane. By the way, if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. No, come back.
Night, I dreamed the same dream. And then the nightmare begins.
Actually, maybe watch this video and then go see it and then come back. And then rewatch this. Anyways, so in this trailer, besides seeing a huge spectrum of multiple versions of Doctor Strange walking around, we also see Strange getting arrested and taken to see a bunch of super powerful individuals. And this is being more or less being confirmed to be the MCU's Illuminati. Now, there is some debate about this as it's not explicitly confirmed that they're the Illuminati. And there are a couple other theories, maybe this is the Council of Kings or even the Council of Strange, but it's more or less confirmed that this is the Illuminati because of the unmistakable voice we hear at the end of this trailer.
We should tell him the truth.
And that is quite accurately our very, very long-missed friend, Patrick Stewart, playing once again Professor X, Charles Xavier from the X-Men. And this is more or less proof that this is actually the Illuminati. And we see in the scene that they're introduced multiple hooded figures. And at the very end of this trailer, we see Wanda Maximoff seemingly breaking into the Illuminati office and sparring off with many of these individuals, possibly trying to take them down. Which of course leads to the video from last week about how Wanda's actually going to be the villain. But who actually is running the Illuminati in the MCU? And that is what has been the actual source of so much fan debate right now, as we see that Wanda Maximoff is sparring off with a certain individual that they seem to deliberately be hiding the face of in this trailer. And for that reason, it's really hard to pick out who this person is. It appears to be some sort of Captain Marvel-like figure who's in the binary form. However, it definitely does not look like Carol Danvers. In fact, the more you look at it, there's more theories that this person might actually be Superior Iron Man based off the costume they're wearing. However, it seems that upon closer inspection, this character is almost unmistakably black. I mean, right? Right? So, before we talk about who this character is, we're going to take a little zoom back to Spider-Man No Way Home. The first franchise of Phase 4, which really focused on multiverse crossovers, if we don't count What If. So, in Spider-Man No Way Home, we're introduced to the character of Norman Osborn, who we haven't seen since, the Spider-Man movie in, 2003 with Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi, who, interestingly enough, is directing Multiverse of Madness. But Norman Osborn tells us something very interesting. Not only is he from a different reality, but in fact, Norman Osborn says that Oscorp doesn't even exist in the MCU. He goes to his own apartment and says someone else is living there, and it seems very heavily implied, especially with the amount he's looked into it, that Norman Osborn doesn't actually exist in the MCU. And this gives us some insight as to how the MCU is actually functioning, where characters that are in the multiverse might not actually be in the MCU proper. They may have never actually been born. Characters like Charles Xavier, who may have been born in a parallel universe, but not in the MCU. And this, of course, leads us to the most important character that we were introduced to at the end of Loki, Kang the Conqueror. In the season finale of the show Loki, we're introduced to He Who Remains, a variant of Kang who governs all of time until he is promptly stabbed by a variant of Loki. But we do find out before he dies some things about his life. One of those is that he was actually born in the 31st century and what used to be in the multiverse. That is until he governed all of time himself and destroyed all variants of himself in order to ensure the sacred timeline.
Eons ago, before the TVA, a variant of myself lived on Earth in the 31st century.
So, in the comics, Kang's original name was actually Nathaniel Richards, and he was assumed to be a distant descendant of Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. But what Norman Osborn's story tells us is that just like Norman Osborn isn't actually in the MCU, it's quite possible that Reed Richards himself is not in the MCU. There is no Reed Richards. But there is a super genius that Kang could be related to. And this is probably the trick that they're about to pull on us in Multiverse of Madness and, realistically, Phase 5. That Kang the Conqueror in the MCU is not actually the descendant of Reed Richards, but the only Avenger we know to already have a child. That's it. Tony Stark. The guy who already discovered the multiverse in a way by discovering time travel in Avengers Endgame. And there's a lot going for this, especially his advanced technology, his basic understanding of multiverse, and the most important reason that might go missed, a scene from episode 5 of Loki, where we take a look at the region at the end of time, and we find all the stuff that is about to be demolished and destroyed by Alioth. And amongst those things, a certain tower, an unmistakable tower that used to be the Stark Tower, but on the side says Kang. One of the aliases of course, He Who Remains. And this is an unmistakable image because the font of this tower seems to look a lot like the original font of Stark Tower before it became the Avengers Tower. And this is really indicative because why would the font at the top of Kang Tower look like that? Now, we might think that this is because over time it's been repurchased and gotten name changed over and over again. However, that doesn't really add up because at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, we actually see what's happened to Avengers Tower. And the tower looks very different. Most notably, there's an open courtyard at the lower floors. And this is really telling because if the tower is going to change in the future, that means the only way for Kang to be written on the tower as it looks like in that image is for that to have been the original name on the tower instead of Stark. And so, just like in an alternate version of the MCU, Norman Osborn would have existed, in an alternate version, Iron Man wasn't necessarily always Tony Stark. In fact, in an alternate version of the timeline, the original Iron Man might have been an ancestor of Kang himself. And that is who I think this person is. Because if we look very closely into this image, people have noticed that this looks a lot like Jonathan Majors. And I don't think that's a mistake, because I think it's Jonathan Majors' ancestor who was at one point Iron Man, if not the superior Iron Man, who is actually running the Illuminati. But anyways, guys, that's just what I think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.